All right, Yang Gang.
Is it okay if I record it just for accuracy? What's your name and how do you and how old are you? Okay. So I was wondering if the frequency can look at time. Okay, why? Yeah. Gotcha, okay. All right. That's all I needed. Thank you so much.
All right, Yang Gang. So we're live at the last event here in Londonderry, and Andrew Yang should be here shortly. We've already received our instructions from Lacey Delane. Shout outs to her. Yang Gang. We keep getting amazed, y'all. We keep getting amazed because we are in Londonderry in one of the schools here, and once again, Yang Gang, y'all take a look. This is one of the better spots. I mean, I guess I could go over there where Ted is, but I don't think you'd see as much of the crowd, and we can't go back to this other spot. Well, you know what? Hold on. I got an idea, Yang Gang. Y'all tweet it out. Get it out there. Get some thumbs up on this thing. We're about to get demonetized, but it's okay. Wait, he's gonna be coming in there. Damn it! That's where Andy's gonna be coming in. I bet you. I guess that's good then. Thank you, Ton. I hope I pronounced your name right. That is awesome. Thank you for that super chat. For sure, it helps us get out here. And we'll keep this skinny, and we'll hide over here behind this thing. We're probably currently about to be demonetized for this speaker right here. All that music pumping out. But it's cool. We do what we do for the Yang Gang. Try to take our money. It's all good. Do I have footage of where Andrew hugged that lady yesterday? Bro, you are gonna have to be more specific because Andrew hugged a lot of people yesterday. So hugging the lady doesn't ring a bell. Which lady? I'm surprised too. This is Mama Yang Yang in the chat. Yes, I see that. Hey, Mama Yang Yang. I want to say probably. Yeah. Okay. Is this where he's going to come in? Is this where?
Right here.
Yes. Yes, I can.
I'm not trying to be.
No, I know.
We set up the whole thing, you know.
I just wait for instructions, man. I just try to get.
It's hopefully you know.
For sure. We're all good. Now we got the music blaring in our ear for sure. Thank you, Knight, very much. We will definitely keep yanging. I hope y'all can hear me, because I guess this is where Andrew's probably going to come in. So, that being said, they wanted us to move over here. Hopefully y'all can hear me okay. And they're going to have a bunch of people lined up in here. So Lacey's got, they did really good when they hired her because she knows what she is a boss for sure. Shout outs to the work that Lacey Delane puts in. My gracious. I am undefeated, currently the reigning champion of spots. You want this belt? You better come and get it. Because I am on the front lines all the time. Mister. Hold on. We hauled ass. Oh, that's that jam. So yes, I am undefeated with the spot champion. Look, Papa Yang. Thanks for that shout out very much. I appreciate it. Human and I need to be just like It is an incredible crowd here again, y'all. Incredible crowd. This is awesome. This is definitely where Andrew's coming in. The end of what? This is the beginning. Y'all missing this debate don't mean a damn thing. We are definitely going to be making the next one. Because one category that gets polled all the time is boomers, and there are a lot of boomers. And I need to be loved just like everybody else. Thank you, Shay. Thank you very much for that super chat. We appreciate it very, very much. Yes, this crowd is, look, y'all. Oh, welcome over here, Veritos. Definitely. We love our burners that come over to this side. And we got a bunch, and there's a lot of Trumpers, and it's so awesome that people from so many different ends of the spectrum can come together and unite behind one idea. Humanity first, man, all the way. Leave all that anger behind, y'all. We don't need it. We don't need that anger. Anger serves no purpose. I mean, holding on to that shit, being mad all the time.
You gotta play this good shot.
Yeah. Right? Look, he's just as excited I am seeing these crowds because you've been following this for a long time. And you were there back in the days when there wasn't anybody showing up. You know?
Yeah.
For you to see this, how much does that excite you?
Full appreciation. So just see this play along. There's only like 10 people in the room. Now, 10 times, 20 times, 30 times.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And this is just the beginning. Because all of these people, they all have friends. And if you know one thing about the Yang Gang, is we Yang everybody. All family members, all friends, it don't matter. We're talking about Andrew Yang. So when all these people become Yang Gang, guess what? It's exciting shit, y'all. Woo! Just the beginning. Just the beginning. Look at this. Are you freaking kidding me? Look. This is nuts. People are still coming in. Look back there at the back. Thank you so much, GH. Very much for that super chat. Thank you. Look at all these people, y'all. Oh, awesome, Flash. Shout outs to you. Hopefully a little Yang Gang was being good. Look at this. This is crazy. Yes, Kenneth K, you're exactly right. It is like seeing fruit grow on a tree that you planted months ago. Y'all, we were doing this in South Carolina in the earliest days of this campaign. Y'all go back to our early videos, and you can see the evolution that has taken place in this campaign. Yes, more seats. They're gonna have to pull out some more chairs. They're definitely gonna have to pull out some more chairs. We are live in Londonderry, New Hampshire. And y'all make sure you tweet it out there. Get it out there. Let's get some eyeballs on this, y'all. I mean, 160 people is good, but I think we can do better than that. Why we only got 39 thumbs ups? 40 thumbs ups. Oh, Lacey Delane went out on the move. These are definitely more Yang curious. I guarantee it. Shit has changed in this campaign, y'all. It is completely flip-flopped. Like it used to be all Yang Gang that showed up to these events. And we wanted to come out and we wanted to see Andrew Yang and see this guy for ourselves. And now it's completely changed. At every one of these events, y'all, every one of these events, there's been a massive amount of people. They're all different people because they're all different areas because they're there when we arrive at these events. Y'all see how we haul ass from event to event just to get here before Andrew does. And these people are already packed in when we get here. So it's just, they're Yang curious. You see it, the occasional Yang apparel, and you know those are people who are Yang Gang. Because the Yang Gang is going to rep the math, they're going to rep the Yang 2020 shirts. And you don't see that. You don't see it. There is a lot of older generation voters who, exactly Kenneth K, they want new solutions. And then they see these TV ads, thank you Yang Gang for donating to the campaign because that's how these ads get out there. And it's just amazing to see what has happened. Y'all see that Tom Steyer and Bloomberg have bought their way into the polls, right? We can do the same thing. We can buy our way in to the polls. Sadly, it has to be that way, but I mean, it is what it is. All right. He's definitely.
Are they back?
You know what it is, Yang Gang. It is go time. Here in Londonderry. Get that crowd warmed up.
Yeah.
Yes, please tweet out this live stream. It's starting now, y'all. It's starting now. We got to get some eyeballs on it. Get some tweets out there. Thank you, Veritos. Please like, share, subscribe. Donate if you can. Tweet out this link. Any donation links that you need will be in any of our other videos. For sure, it helps us to pay bills and to get here. Because the market values us at 0. And it takes a lot of gas. And Mama Yang Gang eats a lot. I'm just kidding. She doesn't really. She actually eats about 1 time a day. But she likes to eat. We'll put it like that. This is crazy. Gang, gang, look at the boomer. Kenneth K said that he expects some good crowd reaction tonight. Well, I don't know if y'all know about me, Yang Gang, but I'm gonna make sure there's good crowd reaction tonight. Gotta be the catalyst, y'all. Gotta be the catalyst. We'll take care of that. Don't worry about it. Thank you, semi-conscious.
All right. How y'all doing? That's good. Andrew Yang is in the building. I mean, in a manner of speaking, he's actually behind the building. But that's still pretty cool. And in a few minutes, he'll be here. So if you've been hoping this afternoon to meet the next president of the United States, by sheer coincidence, you've come to the right place.
Yeah!
So a couple of quick things. I got to make sure you're all warmed up. So that's one of my jobs. Another is potentially to kill more time than I thought I was going to. This has happened. This is our 19th public event of the last 4.5 days. They've been amazing. With this, how many of you have seen Andrew in person before? How many, not a trick question, how many have not until today seen him before? Look around you and give yourself a round of applause, because that's how New Hampshire works. I signed up with him early last year and have done scores of events. I've introduced him scores of times, looking at audiences that, frankly, until a few months ago, were a fair amount smaller than they've been looking lately. And the ratio, when I'd ask that question, is a mirror image of now. It used to be 80% had seen him before, 20% had not. And it meant that it was a really friendly crowd, but it wasn't expanding as quickly as you'd ideally like for a campaign. Well, this all weekend, all these 19 events, the last visit a couple weeks ago, this is when the snap occurred, the ratio changed. There's nothing like raising $16.5 million in the fourth quarter to communicate to the masses, like the big dogs, that helps bring people out. To give you context, in the first quarter of 2019, that's when I met him, he raised $1.7 million for the quarter. On New Year's Eve day, he raised $1.3 million that day. That's called progress. So I met him a year ago, actually a year ago yesterday, at the Bridge Street Cafe in Manchester, where I'm from. And by the way, sorry, if you like local politics, my name is Steve Marchand. I used to be the mayor of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. If you like state politics, I ran for governor last year. Some of you may have even voted for me, but not enough, because I lost. It's a humbling experience. Silver lining, I met Andrew Yang. 5 minutes in, I realized I was going to like this guy. 44 years old, first generation American, father of 2, loves math. Holy crap, that's me. That was me. And soon after, the friendship became one where I realized I was talking to somebody who could and should be president of the United States. He spoke in ways that I had not heard in my 20 years of Democratic activism in New Hampshire. He speaks in ways very different from others. And I know for some in the establishment that's a little disconcerting, or at least uncomfortable. But I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news, say the last 4 years or so. There's a large number of Americans that are not terribly comfortable with the establishment either, and are looking for something new and different that can communicate in no uncertain terms. That Donald Trump is not the problem. He may be a problem. He is a symptom of the larger problems facing America. And in the course of that first hour a year ago, I realized He understood that better than any other candidate that I had seen in this cycle, and frankly, in several cycles before that. Let me ask you this. How many of you here walk into the building today and would describe yourself as Yang Gang? Okay. All right. And then how many of you, and we're all among friends, how many of you would describe yourself entering the building today as Yang Curious? Yeah, give yourself a hand, Yang Curiosity. That's nice. That's very nice. We have another name for Yang Curious in the Yang campaign. It's called soon to be Yang Gang.
That's right.
All right? Here's the thing. Right when I signed on last March, I did an event with him up in Plymouth, New Hampshire at the Common Man. We talked about a book you may have seen, The War on Normal People. Yes? It's a great book. Available in paperback. Is it available here? Not too much, a couple, get it quick. But here's the thing, we talked about it. Most diverse ideological crowd I had ever seen. Trump voters, Bernie voters like I was, Clinton voters, Jill Stein voters, Gary Johnson voters, people that never voted before, people that said they'd never vote again. They were all in that crowd. One of them was a gentleman who was wearing the classic MAGA shirt, right? Red shirt, white letters, you know what I'm talking about. Make America Great Again. I went up to him after the event, and he seemed to be pleased. And he said, you realize you have just spent 90 minutes listening to a young Asian American man talk about giving every American citizen $1,000 a month for the rest of your lives. Have you attended the correct event? And he said he had attended the correct event. Indeed, he said, here's the thing. After 2.5 years of Trump, he said, I realized that Donald Trump was the wrong answer to the right question, and that Andrew Yang uniquely was the right answer to the right question. And of course, I followed up with the one you may be asking now. What the hell's the right question then? And he said, here it is. How come at a time of unprecedentedly high GDP, record high stock market, record low unemployment, record low inflation. After all these figures, these are the numbers that we have been told for our entire lifetime. Econ 101 kind of stuff. That when these things are good, you and your friends and your family, your community, the people you love should feel unprecedented levels of prosperity. Does everybody in your community feel unprecedented levels of prosperity? No. Unprecedented levels of comfort and security about their retirement future? No. How about feeling that level of certitude that your children will live the American dream, which is to say that your children will be in a better and more prosperous place than you are? That is not the case. If you were born in the 1940s, it was 93% likely that your kids would enjoy a higher standard of living than you did. If you were born in the 1990s, that number is now below 50%. And that, at the core, is what the American dream is supposed to be about. So these numbers say we should be feeling real good, and yet we feel unprecedented levels of anxiety. He said, it really comes down to this. The question is, how come these things are true, and yet most of my friends feel we are walking on an economic tightrope with no safety net underneath? If the Democratic Party is to win this election and then win the argument and then win the battle to make America the best it's ever been, we're going to have to do better than not be Donald Trump. We're going to have to do better than to be against things. We're going to have to be for things, and we're going to have to project an authenticity and an energy, an affability, a positivity, a specificity, a youthful, diverse face that represents the best of America's future. And the good news is, because of that music, I can stop talking and you can start listening to the next president of the United States of America, your friend, my friend, Andrew Yang.
Let's go, Andrew!
Good to see you. Hello, Londonderry, New Hampshire. How are you? Hello. How is everyone? What a group. This is incredible. It is so great every time I campaign here in New Hampshire. I actually graduated from high school right here in the state. How many of you knew that? Yes, Phillips Exeter Academy, 1992. They had me back to speak about 7 months ago. Reaction. I went to college not so far from here in Rhode Island at Brown University. And then I went to law school in New York City, became an unhappy lawyer for 5 whole months. And then I left to start a company. How many of you have started a business or organization or club or mailing list? Go ahead and raise your hand. So if you have your hand up, you know a couple things. You know, number one, it's much harder than anyone ever lets on. And number two, when someone asks you how it's going, what do you say? Great. My business went great too until it failed. My parents told people I was still a lawyer because they're Asian, among other things. But I'd been bitten by the bug. I worked at a small company and then another, and then I became the CEO of an education company that grew to become #1 in the US, was bought by a big company in 2009. 2009 was a very tough time in much of the country because of the financial crisis. How many of you were here in New Hampshire in 2009, 11 years ago? How was that time here in this part of the state? Not very good. It's like, don't like to think about it. I asked the same question in another part of the state, and this 14-year-old boy raised his hand and said it was very, very hard. And I looked at him, I said, you must have been 4 years old. How do you remember? And he said, my parents had to sell the house, so I remember. And I was like, oh, yeah, you would remember that. I mean, that's the kind of thing you don't forget. It was such a tough time in so much of the country, and I had this sense, I had an insight as to why our economy had crashed. It had crashed in large part because some of the wannabe whiz kids I'd gone to Exeter and Brown and Columbia with had gone straight to Wall Street and come up with mortgage-backed securities and exotic financial instruments and derivatives. So I thought, what a disaster that is, what a train wreck. Let's try and have people do the opposite of that. So I thought the opposite of that would be to head to a place like Detroit or Baltimore or Birmingham or St. Louis to create businesses that would then create jobs in those communities. I left my job to start a nonprofit. How many of you all work at nonprofits now? How many of you volunteered at a nonprofit? You all should at least just pretend to that last one. It's like, are you a good person? Yes, I am. Just that one time, did that thing. So I started this nonprofit. The way I started the nonprofit was I put some of our savings into a 501c3 that I created, and then I started calling rich friends with this question: do you love America? And the smart among them said, what does it mean if I say yes? And then I said, at least $10,000. And so 12 of them said, I love America for $10,000. So I thought you did. So I raised a couple $100,000 that grew to the millions. And over the next 7 years, running this nonprofit helped create several thousand jobs in 15 cities around the country. It was honored by the Obama administration multiple times, so I got to bring my wife to meet the president. My in-laws were very excited about me that week. It's like, well, she did all right. It's like, look at these pictures. But unfortunately, I had this sinking feeling while I was traveling the country running Venture for America that things were getting worse and not better in many places. How many of you grew up in New England or upstate New York like me, like this general vicinity? How about the Midwest? South? West Coast or Mountain West or Southwest? Yeah, I had never been to Missouri or Alabama or Louisiana or Ohio even before running Venture for America. And I felt like when you flew between St. Louis and San Francisco or Michigan and Manhattan, you felt like you were crossing dimensions or decades or ways of life and not just a few time zones. I don't know if you've had that experience yourselves going between parts of the country. But I was still stunned when Donald Trump became our president in 2016. So tonight, I know you all remember well. How did you all react when he won? Cry, crush. Someone in another event said bourbon. To me, Trump's victory was a red flag where tens of millions of our fellow Americans decided to take a bet on the narcissist reality TV star as our president. And even if you reacted with dismay or shock, we all have family members and friends and neighbors who celebrated his victory. Now, if you were to turn on cable news that night or any night since then, why would you think that Donald Trump won? Why would you think he's our president today? Racism, Facebook, social media for sure, Russia, fear, James Comey / FBI, Hillary Clinton, emails, complacency, turnout, electoral college, change, anti-politician, all these things kind of mixed together into some sort of cocktail or brew. But I'm a numbers guy, and I went looking in the numbers for an explanation, and I found it. Over the past number of months and years, we have blasted away 4 million manufacturing jobs in this country. And where were those jobs primarily? Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa, all the swing states that Donald Trump needed to win and did win. And you may know what this looks and feels like because this happened in New Hampshire a little bit earlier, where you all lost 12,000 manufacturing jobs, primarily in the northern part of the state. And when those plants or mills closed, then the shopping district closed and people started to leave and the schools shrank and that community has never recovered. I have been to those towns in northern New Hampshire. I've been to towns that have had the exact same thing play out in Missouri, Ohio, Michigan, Western Pennsylvania. And what happened to those jobs is now shifting to other parts of the economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in Londonderry? And why are those stores closing? Amazon, online. Amazon alone is soaking up $20 billion in business every year. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? Zero. So that's the math, Londonderry. 20 billion out, 30% of your stores and malls close, you get zero back. Most common job in the economy is retail clerk. Average retail clerk's a 39-year-old woman making between $8 to $10 an hour. What is her next move going to be when the store closes? We all see the self-serve kiosks at the CVS and the grocery store and the fast food restaurant, but the changes are more pervasive and subtle. When you all call the customer service line of the big company and you get the bot or the software on the other end, I'm sure you do the exact same thing I do. Which is you pound 000, say human, representative, human, until you get someone on the line, right? Raise your hand if that's what you do. Oh yeah, we all do that. As soon as you hear that software, you're like, oh no, I hope this company still employs a human that I will now get to. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software is gonna sound like this. Hey Andrew, how's it going? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, efficient, peppy, delightful. You might not even know it's software. What is this going to mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work at call centers right now making $10 to $14 an hour? How many of you all know a truck driver here in New Hampshire? It's the most common job in 29 states. There are 3.5 million truck drivers in our country. My friends in California are working on trucks that can drive themselves. They say they're 98% of the way. And if you doubt that the robot trucks are coming, a robot truck just transported 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania 2 weeks ago with no human intervention. Why did they choose butter for this maiden voyage? I have no idea. But if you Google robot butter truck, you will see. And then in Pennsylvania, there was a giant stack of pancakes. Now, what will the robot trucks mean for the 3.5 million truckers or the 7 million plus Americans who work at truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal every day? You can think about our highway system as a circulatory system, and the trucks are like blood cells carrying cargo. But they don't just carry what's inside the truck, they also carry economic vitality. Almost 10% of the jobs in the state of Nebraska support truckers and trucking. What will happen to all of those jobs when the robot truck does not need to stop in Nebraska anymore? We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, what experts are calling the fourth industrial revolution. When's the last time you heard a politician say fourth industrial revolution? Just now, 3 seconds ago. And I'm barely a politician. My wife joked that I'd make a lousy politician because I'm a subpar liar. And it's true, I could barely, I was trying to surprise her with a proposal, and I felt like I was like, she knows. We got to yes eventually. So we're in the midst of this fourth industrial revolution. It's transforming our way of life in fundamental ways. And I went to our leaders in Washington, D.C. I asked them in 2017. So Trump wins. I'm like, oh my gosh, here I am, Mr. Job Creator, getting awards and accolades, and I feel like I'm pouring water into a bathtub that has a giant hole ripped in the bottom. The water is rushing out. It helps get Donald Trump elected. We're scapegoating immigrants for things immigrants have nothing to do with. So leaders in DC, and I say, what are we going to do to help our people make economic transformation? I had my facts and my figures. And what do you think the folks in DC said to me when I said, what are we going to do? Go home, nothing. At an event in New Hampshire, someone made this Scooby-Doo noise. It was like, ooh, ooh. The main response I got out of DC were, number one, Andrew, we cannot talk about this. Now it's verbatim. That one was very reassuring. Number two, we should study this further. Number three, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. How many of you have heard that one before? Yeah, that one sounds somewhat responsible. But I'm the numbers guy, so I said, hey, I looked at the studies. Do you all want to guess how effective the government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs? 1.5. I'm very low, and you're guessing low. And you're guessing low in part because you know people. You know that people aren't all just going to march out of the factory and be like, take me to the coding school now. Like, that's not the way people are. So the success rates were between 0 and 15%. They're a total dud. Of the manufacturing workers in the Midwest who lost their jobs, almost half never worked again. And of that group, half filed for disability. You then saw surges in suicides and drug overdoses in those communities to the point where America's life expectancy has now declined for the last 3 years in a row. Do you know the last time America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row? World War II is a very good guess. Depression's a very good guess. It's earlier than both of those. It's the Spanish flu of 1918, the global pandemic that killed millions. You have to go back 100 years to a point where America's life expectancy declined 3 years in a row. It is highly unusual for your life expectancy to ever decline in a developed country. It ordinarily just keeps going up and up because you're getting richer, stronger, healthier. But in the US, it's gone down and then down and then down again. So when I said this to the folks in DC, one of them said, well, I guess we'll get better at the programs. And another said something that brought me here to you all today. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here in DC will do anything about this because fundamentally this is a town of followers, not leaders. And the only way we will do something about it is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads. And I said, challenge accepted. I will be back in 2 years with the wave.
Yeah!
Now, you may not know this, but you all are part of that wave. You all are among the most powerful people in our country today. I did the math. Do you know how many Californians each New Hampshire voter is worth? 1,000 Californians apiece. So look around this cafeteria. How many of us are there today? I'm going to give a Trumpian estimate. There are 1,800 people here in the biggest room anyone's ever seen. No. There are about 200 people here today. But 200 people here in New Hampshire is the equivalent of 5 football stadiums full of Californians. That is the power you have to shape the future of this country. You all can do something that other Americans only dream about. Most of our fellow citizens look up and they see the government pipes just clogged full of lobbyist cash, and they think there's nothing they can do about it. They are generally correct. There is next to nothing they can do. But you all can flush the pipes clean in 30 short days. That's the magic of this place. That's why I love campaigning here so much. If you take a different message to the rest of the country, we can retake our own government and make it work for the people of this country. This campaign raised $16.5 million in the fourth quarter of last year with 0 corporate PAC money, all grassroots donations, average donation of only $35 each. So my fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's. We are fifth in the polls and rising to become the Democratic nominee. And this campaign is all about rewriting the rules of the 21st century economy to work for us, to work for you, to work for your families. This is the only way it's going to happen. We're in the midst of the greatest winner-take-all economy in the history of our country. You have trillion-dollar tech companies like Amazon paying less in taxes than everyone here in this room today. Now, you may not know this, but this is what you're here to change. You are here to see to it that we get our fair share of all the value flowing out of your communities and bring it back. Bring it back and then do what with it? Put it directly into your hands. Because when it's in your hands, what will you do with it? What does the trickle-up economy look like? How would you actually spend $1,000 a month if you were to get it?
Car repairs.
Student loans. How much of it would stay right here in New Hampshire?
Most of it.
Most all of it. Some of it would flow out. You might get your own Netflix password. But most of it would stay right here in your communities. Now, I know that at some point you've seen that there's a man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. And I know the first time you saw that, you thought that was too good to be true, a gimmick that will never happen. But this is not my idea, and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of the country. He called it the citizen's dividend for all Americans. Martin Luther King, whose birthday we celebrate every year, was fighting for this when he was killed in 1968. It's called a guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. I met with his son in Atlanta, and he said this is what his dad was fighting for. 1,000 economists, including Milton Friedman, one of the fathers of modern economic theory, endorsed this plan in the 60s, passed the US House of Representatives twice in 1971 under Nixon. It's called the Family Assistance Plan, would have guaranteed an income floor for all Americans. And then 11 years later, one state actually passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that?
Alaska.
And how do they pay for it? And what is the oil of the 21st century?
Technology.
Data, technology, AI, self-driving cars and trucks. A study just came out that said that our data is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study? How many of you got your data check in the mail last month? We laugh, but if our data is now worth billions and billions of dollars a year, where is all that money going?
Facebook.
Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, the $1 trillion Jeff Bezos, she like singled out an individual. No, it's true. No, Jeff Bezos is worth $115 billion post-divorce. No judgment. I mean, it's just like a statement of fact. We have to make sure that we're getting our fair share from the biggest winners of the 21st century economy. If we get our fair share of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad, eventually every robot truck mile and AI work unit, we can easily afford this $1,000 dividend in our hands. After we spend it in our communities, it creates all sorts of new economic growth right here in New Hampshire. Actually creates an environment where your kids don't necessarily feel like they have to leave your town or your state to have the kind of life that they want to lead. There was a corrections officer right here in New Hampshire who said to me, we should pay people to stay out of jail because it costs so much more when they're in jail. This was a corrections officer. He knows, I mean, he's like staring at it every day. So these are the things that we can do to build this trickle-up economy that would actually pay for itself many times over. One estimate said that just by making us stronger, healthier, better educated, it would increase GDP by $700 billion, just based on better health and education outcomes for our people. I've run several organizations, and I know investing in people is what good organizations do. Here in America right now, are we investing in our kids? Are we setting them up to actually succeed? Are we putting them in a position where they're going to lead a better life than we have led? I know Steve said some of the same things. Steve is a parent, I'm a parent. How many of you all are parents? If you're a parent, you've had this sinking feeling that we're leaving our kids a future that is less secure, less stable, and less prosperous than the lives that we have led. We feel that way because that is the truth of it in the numbers. I'm not running for president because I dreamt about being president. Those were not the conversations in the Yang household, I can guarantee you that. It was more like, you're terrible, clean up your room. What's this? That's true. And now my mom's like, it's like, how did you do it? Anyway. I'm running for president because, like those of you had your hands up, I'm a parent and a patriot, and I have seen the future that lies ahead for our kids. It is not something I'm willing to for them. They deserve better.
Yeah.
And you all, unlike anyone else in the country, can ensure that they actually will do better. Every other family in the country wants that kind of power that you all have. And the question is, how are you going to use it in 30 days' time? It's a really profound question, but it's an awesome one. As Steve said, we get told how great things are by these headline economic measurements. They say corporate profits are at record highs, GDPs are at record highs. It's not GDPs, actually, it's GDP. GDPs at record highs. Also at record highs, the United States of America right now. Debt, student loan debt, financial insecurity, Americans living paycheck to paycheck, stress, anxiety, mental illness, depression, suicides, drug overdoses. Again, if corporate profits are going up and life expectancy is going down, which do you listen to? We know which one DC is listening to. DC can't even see people in life expectancy. DC is just staring at the dollar signs. Washington, DC today is the richest city in our country. Think about that. What do they produce? Whatever they're producing, business is very good. Donald Trump said he wanted to drain the swamp, and that actually evoked a lot of support from the American people. I don't want to drain the swamp, I want to distribute the swamp. Why would you employ hundreds of thousands of workers in the most expensive metro area in the country? Why wouldn't you move some of those workers and jobs to Ohio, Michigan, New Hampshire, Missouri? Much lower cost, you'd save billions of dollars right off the bat. And I'd argue that the agencies would make better decisions because they'd actually live someplace normal instead of a DC bubble where they just look at each other all day. Right. I'm for term limits for members of Congress.
Yeah.
The job of our representatives should be to head to DC, get work done on our behalf, and then come home. Their job should not be to go to DC and try and crouch there for as long as possible, being like, ooh, let me stay, let me stay. As your president, after I do everything I can for us for 8 years, you will never hear from me again.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not going to stay in DC a day longer than I have to. I'll be like, once that I'm sworn out, all right, I'm out. One of the reasons why we're so confused as a is that certain economic measurements are going up while our quality of life is going down. And when you have that kind of issue, no, it's fine. It's the Russians always trying to interrupt my events. Oh, I'm totally kidding. That was very operatic though. It was like one of those Academy Awards where like the speech goes on too long and there's like the rising music and then I'm like, I just want to thank 3 more people. It's fine. I've had the same thing happen to me. So we have these measurements that are heading up even as our quality of life is going down. What we have to do is bring them together. And the most obvious way to do this is actually upgrade our measurements to tell us how we are doing. Instead of GDP and corporate profits that are going to go up when robot trucks come, we need things that actually tell us how we are going to be progressing. So instead of GDP, how about wellness and life expectancy? Mental health and freedom from substance abuse? Clean air and clean water, environmental sustainability? Proportion of Americans who can retire in quality circumstances? Childhood success rates? These are the real measurements of our society. And as your president, it will be my pleasure to go to the Bureau of Economic Analysis and say, hey, GDP, 100 years old, really out of date, kind of useless. Even the inventor said 100 years ago, this is a terrible measurement of national well-being and we should never use it as that. And here we are riding it off a cliff 100 years later. I'm going to modernize it to this scorecard that highlights how we are actually doing in our communities, and I will present the real data to everyone every year at the State of the Union. I will be the first president to use a PowerPoint deck in the State of the Union. And I know how deeply flawed our economic measurements are because of my own family. My wife is at home with our 2 boys every day, taking care of Christopher and Damien, one of whom is autistic. Our boys are 7 and 4. How much is her work included in our economic measurements every day or every year?
0.
0. Evelyn and all the stay-at-home parents around the country get a 0. All the caregivers taking care of ailing loved ones, 0. Volunteers and activists, 0. Coaches and mentors making people stronger, 0. 98% of artists, 0. Increasingly local journalists. We have put 2,000 local newspapers out of business over the last number of months because all the classified ads disappeared to the internet. You know what doesn't function as well without local journalism? Democracy. Because how the heck are you going to vote on what's going on in your community if there's no one telling you what's going on in your community? These are some of the things that we claim to value most highly in our lives, our families, our communities, our democracy, and we are allowing them to get zeroed out one by one by one. I talked to my wife about this when I started the campaign, and she said, how has America gotten so far to this side? And I said that we have allowed ourselves to get collectively confused that economic value and human value are somehow the same things, when they are not. The message you have to take to our fellow Americans in 30 days is that we all, and our children, all have intrinsic value as Americans, as citizens, and as human beings ourselves. We have to say that the machines work for us, and it's not that we all work for this giant capital efficiency machine. This is the way we humanize our economy and get it working for us. This is how we're able to look our kids in the eyes and say that their country loves them, their country values them, and their country will invest in them for real.
Yeah.
I love New Hampshire because you all can make this real in a heartbeat. I can feel it. Energy is rising. Everything is getting focused on February 11th right here in this state. Donald Trump is our president today because he had a very, very simple message. He said he was going to make America great again. What did Hillary Clinton say in response?
It's already great.
America's already great. Remember that? It's been a long 3 years, I know. But it's about to end.
Yeah.
Hillary's response did not go over well because the problems are real. We have to acknowledge the depth and severity and reality of the problems in our community, but then we need real solutions that will actually help move the country forward. What were Donald Trump's solutions? Build a wall, turn the clock back, bring the old jobs back. Londonderry, you know we have to do the opposite of these things. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society to rise to the real challenges of the 21st century. We have to evolve in the way we see ourselves and our work and our value. I am the ideal candidate for this job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Yeah! Thank you very much, Londonderry. Woo! You may not know this, but math is an acronym, and what does it stand for?
Make America think harder!
Make America think harder, that's right. That is your job in 30 days. It is your job to move this country not left, not right, but forward, and I know that's just where you'll take us. Let's go, let's make history together, New Hampshire. Thank you. Thank you, Londonderry. The greatest room of all time. So I'd love to take some questions. I think Lacey has a mic and will select you at her discretion. I don't know what Lacey's criteria are.
Not much.
Wow, first question. I've spent a lot of time in West Virginia, and I know this is New Hampshire and I'm from here, but those coal miners that were putting out of work, and we need to put out of work, they have a real strong sense of place, and this is something we understand here in New England. They want to make a living in the mountains that they love. Yet we need to move forward on the climate change issue, which is going to put them out of work. And in some ways, it's like the furniture guys up in Groveton. Talk to me about how you would deal with that issue.
Thank you, and this is the crux of my campaign in many ways. So I'll tell you what I would not do. I would not say that we're going to turn coal miners into coders, because that's essentially ridiculous, and talking about it is a waste of time and immensely counterproductive for our society. So the question is, what are the roles of the future? For starters, if you put $1,000 a month into a community, let's say in West Virginia, let's say there's a town of 10,000 people in West Virginia, they're getting an additional $10 million a month in buying power. Then the money will flow to local nonprofits, religious organizations, and local businesses that will each need to hire accessibly right there in that community. One of the messages I think is a loser for Americans everywhere, and it's the subtext of a lot of what's going on, is that you have to move and leave your home and leave your family if you want to live a good life. That's a losing message. What we have to say instead is we need to remake our economy and our rural communities to work around us. We're the richest, most abundant country in the history of the world. We're up to $21 trillion and counting. And we can easily put the resources into that town so that people are more able to do the kind of work that they want to do and can reconstitute organizations and businesses that serve the needs of their community. One of the biggest farces in American life right now is that we don't have the resources to get things done. I'm the numbers guy. Does anyone here remember voting for the $4 trillion bailout of Wall Street? Does anyone remember anyone there being like, where are we gonna get the money? Where are we gonna get the money? No, they had a choice between bailing out the banks and keeping Americans in their homes, and they chose the banks. I was so disgusted by this decision. I found it so corrupt that I quit my job, started a nonprofit, ran it for 7 years, to several thousand jobs, because I thought that would be generative and productive. Kind of choice that we're making where towns are concerned too. We're saying, hey, your coal mine's been stripped bare, now you're dead. Now you have no value. Your furniture manufacturing plant closes, you're also dead. What we have to say instead is that this is the richest country in the history of the world. We can easily put resources into the hands of every single American to help those communities have a path forward that will work for them.
Yeah.
So jokes I tell is that anyone who thinks a coal miner should become a coder is generally neither of those things.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you talk to coders, they're like, yeah, you should definitely jump into this. I mean, coding is like a sophisticated foreign language. Would you suggest that like coal miners all become Russian translators? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And oh yeah, sure. I was just venting a little bit.
Hello. Are tariffs a policy that you think would help equalize our relation with China and other rising economies? Or are there other solutions that you propose that would be more productive?
Thanks for the question. I like it. Tariffs are a tool that sometimes can be handy and useful. I think initiating a trade war is counterproductive, and I was in Iowa, and there people are very angry because they've had their prices change and had to fire people and disinvest and do all these nasty things for things they had nothing to do with, which are the Chinese piracy of intellectual property. So to me, tariffs are there as a tool. You'd want to use them very, very judiciously. You'd want to use them with a lot of transparency and lead time. So if you are going to use them, you'd say, hey, in 2 years' time, if you don't change these practices, these tariffs are going to go up, and actually use them as an instrument to push people in a direction you want to go. You don't want to put other countries, governments in a position where they feel like they're going to win or lose. You have to try and create paths for them to be able to look good for their people in a way that meets our goals and ends. So I'm very much against the way that Trump has run the China trade war, because I've seen the victims in America of that trade war, and as far as I can tell, it has not really remedied the abuses that it was meant to. Thank you. Good question, though. I feel like you're studying economics at the high school level, or your college student.
So you've discussed about automation and and how jobs have been increasingly taken over by machines in your debates, as we've seen previously. But one issue that I'd like to discuss is immigration. So what are your plans for immigration reform?
Thanks for the question. I'm the son of immigrants myself. I instinctively believe that immigrants make our country stronger and more dynamic. And I talk about my family's history. So my parents met as graduate students at UC Berkeley. My father went on to get a PhD in physics. And when I was a kid, I thought that everyone's dad had a PhD. So I would go around being like, what's your dad's PhD in? And then eventually someone was like, here's what his PhD was in. I was like, oh no. And then I learned. And then I got a little bit older, and I found out that my dad generated patents for GE and IBM, and it sounded very important. So I went to him and said, how much do you get paid when you generate a patent? I was waiting for him to say, like, well, that's lots of money. And he was like, I get paid about $200. And then I said, that does not sound like a lot. And he said, well, I also get paid a salary so I can feed, house, and clothe you and your brother, with the message being like, shut up. And then I was like, oh, I see how that bargain worked. So I raise this story because that was a huge win for my family. I came to this country, create a better life for me and my brother. And I would argue that my father generating 69 US patents for GE and IBM was great for the United States too. So that's the kind of equation that we need to be running more of, where we need to stay a magnet for people around the world who want to come here and innovate and drive value in various ways. Almost half of the Fortune 500 companies were founded by either immigrants or children of immigrants, as one very big signal. So I'm pro-immigrant. We do need to enforce the southern border and have real policies in place. But I believe that the people who are here and trying to create a better life for themselves, we need to have a path to citizenship for people who are here and undocumented. Because right now we're in a bad situation for everyone, where you can pretend you can deport 12 million plus people, which would destroy regional economies and destroy families and be inhumane and all this other very deeply problematic elements in real life. You can do what we're doing now, which is just not know what's going on, and then have people run into your institutions when they get into a car accident or an emergency room or have a problem at school. Or you can try and create some kind of new legal classification and say, hey, come in from the shadows and we will have this long-term path for you over time. To me, the third path is the right one. It's a path that Marco Rubio and other Republicans supported until they lost their political courage. And even when we put this new third path in effect, the fact is many people here will never actually trust the government anyway, and they'll try and stay in the shadows. So we have to actually create a path that has like a legitimate hope for them and can inspire in them that this is a long-term place for them and their families, like above like the shadows or out of the shadows.
Yeah.
So you were talking earlier about like the robot butter trucks and like all those like technology stuff taking over jobs, but I'm on the robotics team here at the school and I'm an aspiring engineer, so I'm just wondering how you're planning on still encouraging people to get active in these, like plenty of opportunities in these jobs that are engineering, architecture, all those things, and like still be able to compete with other nations and things like that if we try to like decrease the amount of people in those positions.
Oh no, but first let me say, let's give her a round of applause for being all over the robotics in the future. That's so cool. I'm friends with a guy named Dean Kamen. Do you know who Dean Kamen is? You might have done the... I am the most progress, pro-innovation guy around, I think. I'm just also a very pro-human being. Like, I want human beings to all be excited about progress and innovation. Right now, 8% of Americans work in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math. So it's not realistic to say, hey, we're going to turn 92% of you into 8%. Like, that's not realistic. But we do need to invest a lot in helping channel Americans towards fields and livelihoods that will be here for a long time to come. So, massive opportunity here in the US. We are underinvesting in technical, vocational, and trade programs from the high school level up. Only 6% of American high school students are in technical or apprenticeship or trade programs. In Germany, that's 59%. Think of that gulf. You think we're missing something there? So we need to invest in those jobs, and those jobs will be with us for a long time to come. We have millions of unfilled roles in those industries. And one joke I tell, but it's true. Can you imagine what it would take to have a robot HVAC repair person come to your home? Or, it's like impossible. That they're going to be humans doing very important technical work for a long time. It's just right now we are not investing enough in those programs. I'm going to team up with Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs and go around saying, like, these jobs are awesome, and then like invest billions in trying to push Americans in that direction, because that's what we need more of. So keep it up. You're awesome. Progress is awesome. Invention's awesome. And I'm going to throw an A into STEM for STEAM. A is arts. We need to invest a lot more in arts education. Lacey, do you have another victim for me? No, I'm kidding.
Actually,
Why
even
don't?
worse.
I guess it might be selfie time. Is that what happened?
It is selfie time. You never want the candidate to say, I can't take any more questions because I got to get on a flight to Des Moines. So you have somebody else do it for them.
Let me just say one thing before we close. So I want to say I haven't talked that much about climate change, but how many of you are concerned about climate change? You should know that climate change is maybe the top priority for me and my administration. One of my first acts will be to put a price on pollution and carbon emissions so that the people that are actually speeding up climate change have to pay back into the system, and then we use all of it to move us towards renewable sources of energy. Yeah. So you should know, I'm serious, like I see how this is already endangering us, not just here in New Hampshire, but everywhere. We've all seen these horrific images out of Australia. How many of you have seen them? Like, it's like out of a science fiction nightmare movie, and we need to make progress as rapidly as possible. I'm going to throw one last thing that's hopefully tie this together. In a country where 78% of us are living paycheck to paycheck and almost half of us can't afford an unexpected $500 bill, if you go to that person and say we need to worry about climate change, what is a natural response?
It's gonna cost.
How much is it going to cost me? I can't pay next month's rent. I'm worried about this week, not like years from now. We have to get the boot off of our people's throats, and then we will be able to make much more rapid progress on climate change. And we're going to find that out in my administration.
Okay, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, give it up one more time. New Hampshire. Andrew Yang.
Let's go, Andrew! Let's go! Right. Thank you, London. That was beautiful. Woo!